Do you remember when the US launched a ton of sand into space? Of course you don't, because it was a secret military launch. I call this the Great Sand Yeet of '94. Now, why did the US launch a ton of sand into space? Okay, so we launched a ton of sand into space, but I can promise you it was for a very good reason. Okay, not really. But this is the military, so who's surprised here? Now, this was a classified space launch, but I would like to reassure you that all of the information presented in this video was gathered from publicly available sources. Let's talk about orbits. Low Earth orbit is approximately less than 1,200 miles above the surface of the Earth. This is where Starlink satellites, the International Space Station, the Hubble Space Telescope, and a host of other satellites orbit. The space shuttle, when it was operating, could reach low Earth orbit. Medium Earth orbit is approximately 1,200 to 22,000 miles above the surface of the Earth. This is where the GPS satellites orbit. Now, I'm not going to apologize for not using metric units. Our rockets, our rules. And finally, geosynchronous orbit is 22,000 miles approximately above the surface of the Earth. Now, it's worth noting that the Great Sand Yeet actually reached geosynchronous orbit. The Great Sand Yeet was part of the Milstar satellite program. The Milstar satellite was designed to provide secure, jam-resistant worldwide communication, even in the event of a world war. The first Milstar launch was February 7th, 1994. The Milstar satellite was launched atop a Atlas IV rocket with a Centaur upper stage. Now, before we talk about the Milstar launch and the Great Sand Yeet, let's talk about the Atlas rocket. Like many things in the U.S. space program, the Titan rockets had its roots in the Cold War. The Titan I was the U.S. first two-stage intercontinental ballistic missile, also known as an ICBM. The Titan II was also mostly used as an ICBM, but was also the launch platform for the Gemini space program. Now, because the Titan II was stored in missile silos, it used a hypergolic engine based on nitrogen tetroxide oxidizer and a hydrazine-based fuel. Now, hypergolic is a chemical term for when these two chemicals meet, they're having a big exothermic party. In normal ignition, you need three components. You need a fuel, an oxidizer, and a source of ignition. In your car, gasoline is the fuel, air is the oxidizer, and your spark plug is the source of ignition. With hypergolic fuels, you can skip the ignition. All you need is two chemicals that when they even touch each other, they go to being violently reactive with each other, the chemicals used in the Titan missile were also nasty chemicals all on their own. The Soviets went even farther and used a different oxidizer called red fuming nitric acid, along with the same hydrazine-based fuel that the Titan missile used. Now, if you think red fuming nitric acid sounds like something you want no part of, you'd be correct. This fuel mixture was so nasty that the Soviet engineers dubbed it the devil's venom. This made the Netherlands catastrophe much worse. Before I talk about the Netherlands catastrophe, I'd like to talk about rocket engines. The rocket engines are similar to a bomb with one important difference. A bomb expends all of its energy all at once in every direction at once. A rocket engine expends its energy over a certain period of time in a single direction, if everything goes according to plan. The Netherlands catastrophe is a tragic example of what happens when things don't go according to plan. The Netherlands catastrophe is named after Chief Marshal of the Artillery, Mitrovan Ivanovich Netherland. On October 24, 1960, the Soviets were preparing a prototype of the R-16 ICBM for launch. A failure in the second stage engine caused it to ignite prematurely on the pad, causing the entire rocket to explode. This immediately vaporized all the workers in the launch pad area, and the fuel from the explosion poisoned workers farther out. Remember, red fuming nitric acid. The Soviets covered it up and told all the families of the victims that they died in a plane crash. Chief Marshal Netherland was in the habit of taking a chair to the launch pad area to observe preparations and also to make sure that everyone was working hard. It is believed that that's what he did the day of the accident. It is only known for sure that he perished that day. It is believed as many as 300 military personnel and workers may have perished in the accident, making it the worst accident in the history of space exploration. Okay, now back to the Titan rocket. There were a lot of variants of the Titan III that were used for a variety of purposes, but we're going to skip over the Titan III and go right to the Titan IV. The Titan IV was an extended length Titan III with two solid rocket boosters, one added to each side. It could be launched with or without the Centaur upper stage. At the time, it was the most powerful uncrewed rocket available to NASA and the Department of Defense, and it was used heavily. When launched from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station with the Centaur upper stage, the Titan IV could launch 12,700 pounds into a geosynchronous orbit. Now keep that number in mind, 12,700 pounds, because that's going to be relevant later. Now back to Milstar. Milstar was a truly huge satellite, weighing in at 9,900 pounds, slightly less than the maximum capacity of the Titan IV rocket with the Centaur upper stage. It was also quite big, with a length of 51 feet and a width of 116 feet with the solar arrays fully extended. The solar arrays could generate over 8,000 watts of power. The Milstar was intended to have a low data rate communication system and a crosslink communication system. The low data rate communication system was for ground to space communication, and the crosslink system was for satellite to satellite communication. There was also supposed to be a medium data rate system, but that was not available for either of the first two Milstar launches. Since the medium data rate communication system was not available for the first Milstar satellite launch, the solution was to fill the empty space with 2,000 pounds of sand. This is to maintain the balance of the satellite. And thus, the Great Sand Yeet occurred on February 7th, 1994. After that, there were additional 4 more successful launches of the Milstar satellite. And despite a projected lifespan of 10 years, all 5 Milstar satellites are still operational and are now maintained by the Space Force. So that's it. That's the story of how the U.S. launched a ton of sand into space. I have included more information in the description below. If you liked this video, please hit the like button. If you would like to see more of this kind of content, please click on subscribe. Thank you for your attention.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.